What is good, everyone? Welcome to the Outside the Box podcast. My name is Nick Ingval, and on this podcast, my goal is to give you a different way to look at the sneaker game, the footwear industry, introduce you to people that I think are doing cool things, and give you just a different perspective from the go out there, cop this, cop that, resell this, resell that. I want to give more insight onto the business of footwear and how you can get involved in it, talk to people that can introduce you to different ways of thinking about it, and yeah, that's basically it. I want to kind of open up the doors, so to speak, on the footwear business and the industry that's behind it to hopefully inspire more of you to get involved in it because it's something that I really enjoy being a part of. I'm excited for today's episode because I get to talk to someone who is an incredible human being, someone who I admire in the creative space. He's photographed people like Aleali May, J-Rock, Aaron Judge, James Harden, Zion Williamson, recently Selena Gomez, shot music videos for Gucci Mane. I mean, the resume is endless, and he's also one of the most humble people in this industry, as you will see. So, without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Vince Sirico. Hey, what's good, everyone? Welcome back to the Outside the Box podcast. My name's Nick Ingval, and I'm super stoked today to talk to one of my good friends in this whole creative space that surrounds the sneaker world. I've got Vince Sirico with me. What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me.
Of course, man. I feel like there's I don't want to like call anybody out, but there's like a handful of people in this whole game that I just get excited to reconnect with, and we always kind of ebb and flow, and eventually it's like, man, we gotta be in touch more often, So I'm glad to actually get to talk to you, and also thanks for hopping on with Sneaker Combos a couple weeks back. That was awesome, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was did you what was the post sneaker combo like week for you? Did you just chill out? Because that was so much.
Well, it's interesting you ask because I know you can relate to this. I intended to chill out, and and then realized that I scheduled like a coffee and then like a little pickup session where I had to drive down to the Bay Area and like the day after.
So you just kept going.
Yeah, and so like we did make it to the beach. We took the dog to the beach and had a little bit of a half day vacation.
Nice.
But yeah, it was a long week, man. It spiraled way out of control, as most things that I get into do. It's like, I'm going to start doing this little thing. It's going to be fun. And next thing you know, it's like, wow, this could actually be like an entire business of its own. Maybe we should consider this. And like,
right.
So I don't know. I guess I can say that and just hint that, yeah, we're definitely considering doing this sneaker combos thing in the future again.
It was sick. I feel like you were live for like 72 hours.
Yeah, man. Actually, I was trying to figure it out. I need to actually go back in and look at the numbers. But it was basically 30 separate panels. I was not on, I think, 4 of them.
Okay.
And it was 5 days straight. So some of those, most of them were capped to about an hour, but some of them were 2-3 hour sessions. So
yeah.
But I think it's just like, to me, it just like furthered my belief that, hey, we need to have more important conversations in the sneaker world because there's a lot of us doing a lot of cool shit, and there's a lot of us that could benefit from talking to each other about what we're doing and supporting each other, because that's I mean, and we'll get into that more, but like that's part of what I think is missing. We collectively are like a massive group of people that earn a living in this space in some way, shape, or form. Some people part-time, some people full-time.
Right.
But we don't have like industry, like, hey, let's all like come together, learn from each other, talk to each other,
100%.
Just get to know each other more, right? It's like, we see each other every few months at an event. It's like short, we're having a drink and like, cool, we're on to the next thing. And
I even like look at the clubhouse like thing, and there's all these groups, but it's like, where's like I seen one, it was NFL like sports creators. It was like all the photographers for the NFL teams, and I was like, where's like the sneaker like squad? There's like little ones here and there, but it's like I feel like there is like a huge, like you said, group of us, and it's like we rarely ever talk or see each other in the same place.
Yeah, and you know, like for me, the pandemic is just like hammering home on the fact that I'm not getting to see all my friends as
Yeah,
regularly as I would have normally. So, but yeah,
for
it's I'm excited at how it turned out. It was definitely a long process, and you know, to for me to get the little like cease and desist from South by Southwest. I might have to bleep that out, but like
yeah.
you know, like
That was
it
sick.
was like okay, well, this definitely got bigger than I anticipated, right? Like
Right.
I knew that the name couldn't exist with South by, but
Yep.
I thought, hey, we'll do some small thing and then I'll try to partner with them next year or something, you know. And then it was like they already are realizing we're doing this and like you can't do this. And the only thing that sucked about that is, you know, you probably experienced in some of your work is like it was the day of. So like
Oh yeah,
it was like,
that's
you
tough.
know, just like a crazy amount
Scramble.
of work to go change everything and take all that off of recreate assets and all that stuff. But yeah, it was still
Damn.
fun. I would still do it again, and it was awesome to catch up with you know a bunch of people that I haven't talked to in a
Yeah,
while. So,
that was great.
but enough about me. Let's talk about you. You're the guest here, and I want to like introduce the people that are watching, listening to
Cool.
you. So I guess let's do like the brief history, the brief background on who you are and what you do.
Yeah. I am pretty much a photographer, and it's an all freelance photographer, and pretty much just stay inside of the footwear industry and kind of rarely step outside of it. And then in the past 2 or 3 years have kind of just been around and learning kind of the producer, the director roles, and how those kind of operate, and have been doing that a little bit. So I was actually just in Boston Wednesday and got to direct completely. Like it was cool. I didn't get to bring my camera for the shoot, which was like
Nice.
kind of a first. Yeah, so it was cool. So just kind of learning the whole kind of production world in itself, but really still inside of the sneaker kind of industry. And yeah, I've been doing it for like a good maybe like 7, 8 years now.
Yeah, so I'm gonna call you out on this a little bit because you're way too humble for this, man. You got a resume that's kind of just packed with like
Thanks, man.
celebrities and successful like work. So I think let me see, like just like thinking about the stuff that I remember seeing. So you know, obviously on the sneaker side, you've shot with you know the James Hardens,
Yep.
Aaron Judge.
Yep.
Uh, I'm pretty sure you've done stuff like with Virgil Abloh at some of
Yep.
the shot with who else? Didn't you do like some Gucci Mane thing or something
Yeah, I
too at
did a
some
Gucci
point?
Mane music video.
Yeah. See, okay, so
Yeah.
and then most recently I saw Selena Gomez on your page. So I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
got
Thanks.
you got quite a resume, man. So
Appreciate
you
it.
definitely have found some ways to branch out from the sneaker world. I think.
Yeah, for sure. But in a weird way, it's still all kind of connected. Like, at which I'm sure you've had the conversation a million times. It's kind of crazy. I don't. I think maybe it's just more now than ever because sneakers. I'm sure you've seen it. The Lexus commercial where the girl says, "I'm a sneakerhead."
Yeah. Yep.
Like that's crazy. It's insane for like a Lexus like F Sport. Like just like a full blown commercial. So it just like touches everything now.
Yeah. It is. I mean, it's funny because like I think we've even talked about this, right? But it's like it's almost rare that like people that I know through sneakers and I talk about sneakers at this point when we see each other, right? Like
Yep.
it's all the other things in life, and I think that's always been like sneakers just always been the conduit for me to get to bigger, more important, and like you know just more meaningful connections with people.
Yeah.
And not to say that the sneakers aren't meaningful because that's the stories that bring us all together, but I think like you know it's getting past that and understanding like it's more than just what you purchased or whatever. It's like what did you do with that sneaker, whether that's
Yeah.
a music video or
Right.
photography or you know writing a book or whatever that is. And I think that's kind of the interesting thing about sneakers, and for me a lot of things kind of tend to be that way, cars being another thing that I'm interested in. But I guess like what how did you end up like sneakers and photography? which came first for you, and like how did that process all start? You know, when
Yeah.
did you pick up a camera and you know learn all that stuff?
I was thinking about that, and it was always like the instinct is to immediately say sneakers, and then like I really think back to like when we would go on family vacations. My parents would always have a little like digital camera, and I just remember like always like asking for it, and then like fighting my brothers for it to just like take random photos of stuff, and that was only like once or twice, and then I took Latin as a language in high school, like freshman year, and I failed it, but there was a convention we went to like halfway through the year, and you had to sign up and do stuff. So like I did like a memory thing where you had to memorize Latin, and then the second one was like photography. And I remember while I had like a dentist appointment in Chicago, like my mom had to drive me, to Chicago to go to my dentist appointment. And I borrowed her camera for the photography thing and ended up like winning it. It was cool. And I remember I just never at the time thought that could be a career path. And that was the end of it, like after freshman year. And I didn't touch a camera probably until for 4 years after that, because I started just getting so into sneakers. And just like kind of obsessing over it. And then I was like, maybe I could make a career somehow in footwear. And at the time, like Ronnie was starting to do those first Asics colorways and was like building Kith. And then
Yeah,
blogs were covering it and it was blowing up, and and even like Frank the Butcher was doing his thing, and there was like Burn Rubber. It was like early on. It was like so cool to watch these people like making a whole career path out of it. So my mind instantly went to either sneaker design, kind of like choosing the materials that go on sneakers, but I didn't know what that job was, or like opening a sneaker shop. That was like the three routes I could go. And like I talk about it all the time. It just kind of drives me insane that you just can't go to school for it really. Like it's just not a thing that's talked about. But like when you're in school, everyone's wearing sneakers, and it's this
yeah,
massive industry. And there's really no set path for kids, unless you live in Oregon and grow up around it.
yep.
You're kind of like shit out of luck. So I remember that just drove me nuts. And then yeah, eventually kind of took a photography class in college, and because I wanted a camera again, and Instagram was blowing up, and that was kind of started shooting sneakers.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's actually something that I've been I feel like I've been harping on it the last, few months in these conversations that I've been having, and because I felt the same way, right? Like you know, being a little bit older, I feel like it was even a little more focused, right? Like I didn't even think
Yeah,
about being able to do colors and materials. It was like you were a designer, you were CEO, you were a sponsored athlete, or you worked in a store, right? Like it
yeah,
was like if you wanted anything to do with sneakers, those were the options. And
right.
one of the things that like I think continues to come up, and I hope that the people that are interested in sneakers, whether they're the high schoolers, the college kids, or like people that are in the middle of a career already, right? Like the business is booming. It's massive.
Yeah,
There's so much opportunity out there, and
right.
it's a lot of chasing and finding where you feel good
Fit.
about it and fit
Totally.
in. Yeah, but it's absolutely there, and it's only getting bigger, right? Because like the secondary
Yeah.
market is now another layer of like doubling,
The whole
tripling the amount of
industry in
opportunity.
itself.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So how? I mean, I can't remember. So how did like your first? How did that first few times of getting paid to do work, happen? And
Yeah.
like looking back at it now, what are things that you would pass along to somebody that just picked up the camera for the first time or whatever?
Yeah. So the first few times I got paid was for Finish Line. So it was back when, I think you were there and Brandon Edler was there. And I remember this was the first ever paid gig. Was Brandon Edler reached out and was like, we're opening a new store in Bucktown in Chicago. And would you be able to go capture photos of it? Like for us. And I was so stoked. And I was even more excited too, because they're like, we'll let you in before we're open. So it was like, I get to be in the sneaker store before it's open, sort of thing. And it was, at the time, it was them doing the LTD stores. So it was kind of trying to cater more towards that sneaker market a little bit. And it was cool. It was beautiful in there. Like, they had the exposed brick, and it was like, I think probably the coolest finish line I've ever stepped foot in till this day. Like, it was cool.
Yeah.
And so it was like $300, and I was like over the moon excited. And then that went well. And then I just he kept feeding me stuff. He was just always looking out for me. You guys always were. And so, but leading up to that, it wasn't like there was my Instagram wasn't empty. It wasn't like there was no sneakers on it. I was shooting my good friend Blake, who, always had like an amazing collection of shoes, because him and his brother were the same size. So it was always back to school shopping. They kind of each got 2 pairs in a way, because they could share. So they just had all these Jordans. So I remember I was constantly shooting with him, and we were shooting his shoes, and I was just going crazy on the hashtags on Instagram, like the crooked tongues and the sneaker, all those like sneaker hashtags, and just kept posting just pictures of shoes all the time. And it kind of just started to roll. But my advice would be to someone younger who's trying to get into it is, before you go asking for paid work, make sure you have that same work that you should be getting paid for already on your feed. And maybe it is you're doing it for free. So shooting a friend's footwear collection, you could go to a store and ask and see if they'd be willing, if you could do some free content for them, just so you can get an eye for that subject. It doesn't even have to be sneakers. It could be jewelry or hats or trading cards now. So just trying to get your hands on product for free, no matter how you could buy a pair of shoes on Nike with the return policies now, shoot them and return them brand new. And you could build a whole portfolio off that, just, and then pitch your work to people. So same with Adidas, like everybody's taking returns, even if you wear them a little bit. So, or go and exchange them or whatever. So I think just building that base of work first, and, knowing your way around the product and how to lace it and style it and all that, I think is a huge start.
Totally agree. How did you transition, or how did you work in, I guess, like thinking about like a lot of people see product photography.
Yep.
And like, you and I know product photography for a brand that's, the e-commerce world versus the lifestyle stuff. But like also for you, you went from sneakers to, shooting all sorts of sports, which I assume is a huge difference. So what was that like for you in the learning process? And like, I guess, how did you go through that process, and how did you learn those, differences as you move through that?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think back to some of the first sports I might have shot. But it was in the same, well, for context though, to be completely honest, I think I've never really been paid for sports photography besides some of the lacrosse stuff I've done. That stuff is always, I still feel like I don't shoot enough of it to get hired all the time for it. But it's because I think my focus isn't fully there. If it was fully there, I think it would be a different story. I always use the reference of this Kendrick Lamar interview Hypebeast did. And it was so good because they were just like, well, we know you obviously like clothes. Like, when are you going to make your own line? And he's just like, I've clearly, where I'm at now is like, my heart's always been in music, and I've gave it all of my focus. And he's like, until I'm ready to give clothing all of my focus, I'm not going to do it, sort of thing. And I kind of look at like your subject you're shooting the same way. So like my focus has always been footwear first. And I really don't look for, like, it looks cool. Like, car photography is awesome to me, and I love to look at it. And I think I could do it, but I'm not willing to put in the time yet to learn how to shoot a car and go out and find someone who's going to let me shoot their car before, and build that, and then get brand work. That's, you almost press the reset button in a way when you choose different subjects. So sports has always been what I do if it's like college sports and stuff, I just say that I'm doing a school project on photography. So I'll email like the athletic director or something, and I'll be like, "Can I take photos at your game?" And they always have said yes. And for high school sports, it's always you're allowed to just kind of be on the field, and people just think you're like a dad of one of the players, just shooting, you know. So and then the McDonald's All American stuff came from just shooting footwear, and they just kind of were like assuming we could shoot sports. They were like,
Yeah.
well, we want you to shoot all the shoes and stuff, obviously, but we also want you guys to capture content for the players. And then they're each going to get their own folder, and we just want them to post it organically, you know? And so we did that for like 2 years. And so that's just, it's always kind of been, I still feel like I'm learning how to shoot sports because so many people do it full time and do it so well. So yeah, but it's usually I'm just doing it for fun.
Well, I think too, like one of the things that I always admired about how you approach that stuff is you still have like there are a lot of people that shoot sports, but like
Mhm.
sports photography is very it's very much like the same as it's always been, right?
Yeah,
And
totally.
you've done a really great job of like taking, with the lacrosse stuff you shot. I think of like obviously the All American stuff, like some of the stuff that you shot with. I think you shot. I think you and it was, I'm pretty sure you shot like Little Yachty years ago or something, and I
Oh
was like,
yeah,
damn,
the
like
music stuff.
you
Yep.
still have like you have a very like I don't know if this is right, and I don't mean it in an offensive way, but it's like a streetwear vibe to all the things you shoot, right?
Yeah, I
And
appreciate that. Yeah.
to me, that's like the appeal, right? Like I look at it as like that, like
Yeah.
I think too some of the Harden stuff you did was like, okay, it's basketball and it's a basketball sneaker, but
Yep.
it feels like street style, right? It feels like that,
Yeah.
like
Thanks,
that,
man.
like well, and I think like that's something that's like really that's something to me that's really an interesting kind of talking point, right? Because I didn't really
Hmm.
think about like having to shift into a whole different mindset or a whole different approach to shoot things, because as somebody who, I mean, primarily only shoots like sneakers or small product photography type things when I'm
Yep.
doing that to get paid. Like I don't really, I mean, I've taken pictures of my cars and friends' cars and stuff at events, but I don't think about that as like a professional thing, right? It's more
Right.
just like I like having a camera on me at all times too, right?
Yep.
So it's like if I have a camera, I'm going to take a picture of what I'm experiencing because I want that memory, but not in like, hey, I'm going to sell this or go get paid to do this
Right.
next time around. Although sometimes it leads you into those things, but for
Yeah.
me, it was never like that, and I never really thought about that until you said that. So that's great to hear. I think like that might be something too that people could even take away from their thought process is like, how do you keep that vibe, across a shoe that's on foot versus somebody standing courtside or on stage or something.
Yeah. I think it. I think there's probably something to do with it in post, maybe with the edit. I think that's always something, even to this day, that I still feel like I haven't mastered, or I'm nowhere close to mastering. Is how you can manipulate colors and um, make things pop. Is it's kind of one of those things that's a lifetime lesson that you'll spend your whole life just tweaking. And I think I always spend like probably more. I definitely spend more time editing than I do actually shooting. Um, so that's a big part of it too, is just figuring out what you like. And for me, it's always been, I think if you were to go through like the work I've done, it's bright colors. Like I've always been like attracted to that stuff that like really pops. And if it's motion stuff, I like it to be fast paced with like a quick beat or something. And I think I've over time, I didn't know what that was. I didn't realize that's what I really liked, because I seen other people doing maybe like muted colors and maybe the more film look where things are more like natural. And so then I was like, whoa, like what am I doing? Like that's not, my stuff's not looking cool like that, or the trend or whatever. And so, and I think it was just one of those lessons over time. I just learned I'm attracted to the super bright colors, and I like try to bring those out, whether it's in the background of the shoe that I'm shooting, or what the person's like wearing. So I think that's a big part of it too. It's like almost like it's like primary colors in a weird way, you know, those bright pops. And yeah, something about it, I'm just kind of like, that's always been my go-to a little bit, which I think helps make the photo pop or look a certain way maybe.
That's interesting. So I guess like just out of curiosity, what do you think like
Yeah.
the percentage of the percentage of shots that you take that you actually edit, and then the percentage of shots that you take that you actually present to a client on top of that? Because I know you probably shoot 1,000
Mm,
times every
yeah.
day that you're out there shooting, right? And typically you probably
Yeah.
only send along 20 or something. I don't know what that number is, but
Right. I even think about that as like even how everyone has a different thought on Instagram, and it's like what do I find like what do I want to post and stuff too, and like I think I edit probably even now through COVID, just being at home and not having like work sometimes. It's not that you don't have work. I think there's like even when you don't have work, there actually is work to be done, whether it's building like the internal, like the monetary side, like the business side, and or if it's working on yourself and like your editing process. So like I was going back through old hard drives of photos and just re-editing them, and the photo looked totally different, and I caught myself finding photos that I didn't select in past years that I liked better now, sort of thing too. So it's just like your opinion on
interesting.
sneakers changes over time, or clothes, like my opinion on like photos, changes too. So there's so many photos that I've edited that will never see the light of day, or go to a client. Um, it's kind of crazy. It's probably like you probably see like 5 to 10% of what I've shot.
yeah,
Yeah,
I,
but I think any photographer probably would have that similar number.
yeah. So is that something that you? I mean, it's interesting to think of like the pandemic and how that could affect someone who spends so much time
Yeah.
taking photos. But is that something that kind of do you ever? I guess does that ever weigh you down in like thinking of like, man, you do so much work for so much little output at the end, like like sometimes that end
Mhm.
result is perfect, right? Like blow it up, put it
Right.
on a wall, like put it on a billboard,
Yeah.
whatever that is. It could be that great of an output, but like just in terms of quantity, it's being so small. Is that ever something that like you mentally have to deal with?
I think it's the yes, like but in the sense of I'm chasing that 5% or chasing that perfect one with every project, and even giving myself the challenge on some stuff that I might not be as excited about every once in a while, trying to get a perfect one out of it. And like chasing that feeling of it being like a really good shoot. Um, and the end goal would be that every shoot is like that. I think that's what everybody's looking for, is that every job you do is awesome and memorable and enjoyable. Um, and I think probably part of the battle is just accepting that there's going to be some that you're just not as excited about, and that's just going to come over time when you're doing stuff. I used to, and what's funny, if you scroll to the bottom of my Instagram, you were seeing 100% of the photos I was editing. I posted everything, and then you see the percentage change big time, whether it's the date between when you're posting and how it looks and everything. It like takes more time, and it's interesting how that works. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm just trying to make them all be in that 5% so I can end up posting everything, but it's just not the case.
Yeah, it's funny because I end up in the same boat with like writing stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
I probably have, so I do an I mean, it took a month off, but like I do like a weekly newsletter. I do blog
Right.
posts all over the place. I do work for other clients. Like if you're into sneakers, there's a good chance that you read my stuff and don't even know it, right? Because I've
Right.
written for other people too. But for myself, I probably have at least 30 to 40 drafts and like half written things for every one or two that I actually publish on
Yeah.
my own newsletter or my own blog or anything. So it's really interesting to think about that because I think it's and I guess like maybe that and this kind of leads me into my next question, but like is that what keeps you interested in photography? What keeps you interested in it? Is it that constant chase of that 5%?
I think that's a part of it. I think it's a mix of things. I think it's that chase of always trying to have the next best shoot, like for yourself personally, is one thing that keeps me interested in it. Another thing that keeps me interested is following people who are super locked in on other subjects. So following like car photographers and being like, damn, that looks so good. I would love to shoot something like that one day. I would love to shoot a Porsche in the middle of the street in Paris and maybe get it in a magazine. And what keeps me interested is that I could do that. Like, I know I could do it, but I'm just not giving it the time yet. So that's another thing that keeps me interested. And that goes into the sports thing too, and the music industry too. Like, I'm super obsessed with, I love shooting sports, and I love music. And anytime I can shoot any of that stuff, or cars or clothes, that's what keeps me interested in it as well. So trying to do other things, when I feel like, or when I take the time to do it. So I think that's another big one that keeps me interested. And then also just seeing some of the younger, like some people are still doing sneaker content now. Someone like Ralph Romeo, or Romeo, like his stuff is awesome, and seeing stuff like that keeps me interested too. Just seeing other people like doing their thing in the industry. It's just cool that there's so many like sneaker photographers and like content creators now. So that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. So you've done like a little bit of video content, right? So how do you
Yeah.
how do you look at that kind of transition for yourself and like, I guess like in
Yeah.
a sense, do you see that as something you'll expand more into? Is that kind of like the same in terms of, expanding your stuff or, and I guess how did that
Yes.
come about too? Because you've obviously done like, client work that's video. So
Yeah. So I think I'm confident in saying I just don't like shooting video myself personally. I've never liked it. And I remember actually it was Finish Line actually. We were on this monthly program we were doing where you shot every month photos. And then they're like, hey, going forward, you got to do a motion piece with it. And I remember being like, I was like freaking out, I was like, I don't want to shoot video. Like, I don't know how to color it the same and like all this stuff. So I just started manipulating my photos into motion. So I think that was like the initial entry into it. But now where it's came with true video work, I just like recognize that I'm not the person that should be holding the camera when it comes to video. And so it came from having a relationship at Reebok and them asking me, could you do, it was one of those things where they kept asking me to do stuff for them to the point where I was maybe every once in a while just editing a photo of someone else's photo for them. But they're like, yeah, the agency we use won't edit it for us unless, it's like for X dollar amount. Can you do it? So I was just doing them favors. And so I never said no to like anything that they needed. And they were like, could you do video? And I was like, yeah. And so, but like my answer to that, yes, is I'm going to do it in the sense that I'm just going to hire someone that does it really well and we'll do it together, whether it's just me giving them direction or briefing them in, and just making sure that they're paid for it. So that was the beginning of it. And to where some of the bigger videos we did, it turned into a whole production. So it was like we were doing, at the end of the day, it is a minute-long video, but like the one for Josh Richardson was, we were in Philadelphia with like a whole crew. Josh was like on the 76ers at the time. So we had to make sure there was like food there for, him and his agents and the crew that I had, and making sure that some of the crew flew in. So making sure that we had a place to stay. So it turned into a whole production thing. And we also had to shoot photos. And at the time I was like, I'm just going to shoot them, and then make sure we get the video thing on lock. So it turned into just learning the whole production world super quick. and just kind of be thrown into that. And then there's been a couple more from that because it went well. And we did it for, I think this is another thing too, we did it for a lot cheaper than what an agency would, or a traditional production house would do it for. Because I think that's the way the content is moving these days. Is it used to cost a ton of money to do stuff, and now you're having people do it for cheaper, and it might not be to someone's eyes super top, Wieden Kennedy agency work, but sometimes you don't need that to get the point across to sell a shoe. And some of these brands are doing it for cheaper, through people who can kind of, it's kind of this production style mixed with run and gun style. So you got to meet in the middle a little bit. And yeah, maybe I might not be making, a ton of money off of it, but it's like, I'm not going to learn that experience kind of anywhere else. And again, it's, if you told me 8 years ago, I'd be doing that, working with like a 76er, in Philadelphia, I'd be like, get out of here. You know what I mean? So it's worth it, So that's kind of how it's came about. And I think it's just by, which I think we talked about briefly in the past, is just saying yes to stuff that you might not know how to do it. I think you hear that everywhere, with like on podcast, people are just saying yes, when they're asked if they can do this, and they just don't know what they're doing, and they just learn on the fly.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, I think, that's definitely, I think what has made me successful in a lot of things, right? Like, just like,
yeah,
I'd rather take it on and learn it. I love learning stuff,
yep.
So like it works well for me anyway, personally. But
right.
But I guess like to that conversation though, how do you even decide like what to charge somebody in those situations? Because one, you're probably working with them on a maybe it's a contract basis or whatever, and like it's like the work ebbs and flows. It becomes much more, and obviously video production and being like a whole different beast. How do you navigate that part of the conversation with clients?
Yeah, I think, and I'll try and just be fully transparent, is when it comes to the brand work, it is that percentage has to be so small of me actually tossing out a number, like them asking me for a number. I always ask first, what's your budget? They always have a budget. I don't care who it is. They have a budget. They know they have a number in mind already. And it never even takes like 2 or 3 meals for me to like get out of them. It's usually just, and I think that's maybe a sign of a good client too, is that they're just willing to tell you the budget. And so that has been how I've operated, throughout the years, is, they always have a budget in mind. If it's ever, and now knowing what those projects are, so maybe it's a one-off product shoot, that budget's always consistent throughout, maybe X brand. And then if they ever come to me and they're like, hey, what would you do this for? And it's, another product shoot, a one-off one, then I just base it off of the last project that we did together. And so that's kind of how I've done it. In terms of the video production side of things, it gets tricky because you hear like maybe a bigger number than you're used to, but it gets ate up so fast, especially on those production things, because you are paying for people to be traveling, you're paying for everyone's food, and it's like by law you have to feed them at least lunch, and it can't be pizza. That's like a funny production rule. Like you can't feed them pizza. Like you have to feed them an actual meal. And so I've just learned from those like couple production projects I've done, the budget goes super quick. But again, I'm willing to use it all on the crew and, whatever camera we're using or whatever, to get the experience. But I think if you are, I would say if someone's really asking you for the budget and you have to price it out, don't price it out for just what you're shooting, actually pressing the camera button. Make sure you're compensating yourself for the time you spend after the shoot editing, and did you pay for that memory card? You know what I mean? Like some people really break it down to like the memory card you're shooting on to the memory card reader you're plugging into the computer. And like, did you get a computer to edit photos, and that some of that stuff goes into, if you need to make your money back, like if you invested in yourself, you can break down your budget like that. And I've seen that done by people. So there's multiple ways to go about it, but I would always try and nicely ask, if there is a budget in mind first.
Yeah, I think that's always like a good place to start, because I find, and maybe you could touch on this too. Like, I find more successful partnerships come from that transparency anyway, because
Right.
like a lot of times for me, I mean, like, I got to pay rent, I got to pay the bills, I got,
Yep.
like, it's all the same for all of us, but I get more emotionally out of working with certain people than I do just getting a check. And so
Right.
that's always a part of my decision making process, is like, do I like these people to where I want to spend, in your case, a week shooting with them or whatever,
Yeah.
compared to, hey, this is, somebody that I don't really have a relationship with, but maybe they're going to pay more, and it's going to be like, okay, cool, this could start something longer down the road. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I mean, to your point, I'd just like to say really quick is, like when you, like the Selena Gomez shoot actually came from, a buddy of mine was shooting one day in the studio for Interscope, and he just needed like basically a PA, like someone to go run and get coffee. And this was like maybe 2 years ago now. And I was just like holding his lenses and stuff. And I met the client there at Interscope, who was awesome. Like, she was the nicest person ever, and we had a great day. You know what I mean? It was a fun day. We were running around New York City, like shooting this newly signed artist. And then fast forward to 2 years later, she'll hit me up every now and then if I'm in a certain city, and that one happened to be for the one for Selena, which ended up being a paid opportunity. So it's sometimes maybe the budget isn't as important as even building the relationship first, sort of thing. So it can pay itself off down the road by just establishing relationships ahead of time.
yeah, man, that's such a beautiful thing when all that stuff comes together and comes back around too.
Yeah.
I mean, I get so juiced when like, my whole thing is like connecting people to opportunities, right? And a lot of times I don't get paid by doing that, right? But like,
Yeah.
when I make an introduction and I see something happen and people doing cool shit together, sometimes right then, sometimes 10 years down the road, it's like, I just get like, okay, I serve my purpose in this world right now for this moment,
Yeah.
But I want to circle back a little bit to the saying yes thing, because we talked a little bit before we started recording about some of the work that you took on in the last few years, where, as someone who has worked in this space for a long time, there's a lot of hats that people wear. Sometimes saying yes means you are the photographer, the PA, the editor, the e-commerce manager, the social media manager. So like, what has your experience been in that kind of world of like expanding beyond the actual photography part into other things, and what have you learned from those, experiences?
Yeah. I think, trying to think, if you really, obviously, let's say something comes onto your plate that you haven't done before and they're asking if you could do it. Obviously think about if you literally can, like, if you're a photographer and they ask you to make like a commercial, like animation or something, like, say no if you don't have the program or the computer to handle it. But I think that's honestly, that'll never be the case. Like, I think most times if someone's asking you to do something, they probably already have confidence that you could do it. And you can, you just might not think you can. But that goes back to, I think, it just depends where you spend your focus at. So from my experience, like saying yes to all of those things, and I've done things that I said yes and I did it, and I didn't like it, but now I can cross it off my list. So one, for example, is just studio photography, being in a um, a white space with lights, or even it could be a colored background with lights or whatever. I don't like doing that stuff, even if maybe it's just an ecom shot, or maybe it's with Billie Eilish. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't enjoy those photos. I'd rather take her outside of the studio and walk around the block and shoot her there. But I wouldn't have known that until I did some studio like photography stuff, and just like learning that. And I can kind of avoid that now, and I think and you also build confidence from doing it, because I used to be like, I was insecure at one time that I didn't know how to use, studio lights. It drove me crazy. You seeing people in the studio and stuff and shooting like these photos or whatever, and that was just one of those things I just didn't have in my back pocket that I could pull out. So I was like, I need to do this, see if I like it. Did it, didn't like it, but now I'm comfortable to say if something ever came onto my plate, if it really wasn't worth it for me, I'll say no, because I know I don't enjoy it, So it's just one of those things where you just don't know until you try. But I do like enjoy editing video, so I don't like shooting it, but I'll edit a video for someone or something. But again, it just comes from trying stuff. Like it just can't hurt.
Yeah, 100% agree, man. It's interesting too, because I think, going back to that whole conversation around like people just don't know all the different opportunities that exist, right? And
Yeah,
I think,
totally.
from an outside perspective, people might see the photography work that you do and post to social, or maybe they see on the client side and think, oh man, like this is
Yep.
cool. But at the same time, for, let's say shoes as the example, for those shoes to sell, there has to be the studio shots, right? Like they have to be,
Right.
not, they don't have to be boring, but in most cases they are boring, but like white background,
Yeah.
product shots are not exciting, but they're a part of the equation that actually results in the money coming into the business for you to do what
Yep.
you're doing too. So I think even just having a little bit of understanding of those things, whether that's, you know, sitting there with the photographers or the editors that are dealing with that, uploading to the website stuff or whatever, gives such a different perspective. And I think like testing the waters of everything for me is kind of like always the way I like to approach it, right?
Yeah.
I'd rather say yes to something that I completely don't understand, or go sit with somebody that's doing something that I'd never thought I'd ever do, and
Right.
then be able to take that back and say, okay, cool, like I want to approach that more and go further and see what it's like, or I'm good, man. Like you keep that to yourself, and I'll
Yeah.
keep doing what I do, right? So,
Yep.
um, so I guess like got a few more questions, and then we'll wrap up. But the
Yeah.
most important one would be how do you keep the balance between like work and life? Because obviously photography and editing, I think people probably don't even understand the levels of work that go into editing compared to swiping through Instagram filters or Snapchat filters and
Right.
saying, okay, cool, it's done, it looks cute, I'm good to go. So how do you balance that?
I think that's another one of those things where I'm still trying to figure out what that balance is, what it looks like. Because I think, we're the same way where it's going to be so rare for either you or I to say no to a project. It would really have to not work out to say no. Like chances are we're going to say yes. So that's been the work-life balance thing is tricky. And I think I catch myself actually just being freelance. I'm on just a little bit more opposite schedule than more people. I actually think sometimes I find myself working less, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I'm more on Saturday, Sunday. Like my weekend sometimes is like in the middle of the week, and I don't know what that is. Maybe it's because deadlines are on Mondays sometimes, like for me. But I don't mind when I'm sitting there editing, like a Saturday feels like a Tuesday to me. It's kind of interesting how that works. But when I'm like really busy and it's back to back, I am like at the computer, from morning to evening, and then I'll step away when I start going cross-eyed or whatever. But I think that's something I could definitely work on, is my work-life balance. I'm constantly like, looking for the next project, or maybe I'm on Instagram looking at what other people are doing, which maybe sometimes isn't the best, or definitely is not the best use of my time, because then you'll find yourself getting in your head or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a constant battle. Work-life balance, something I could definitely be better at. I don't know.
Are you a very like scheduled person when it comes to that stuff? Like, do you like say, okay, I'm going to start editing at 9 until it's done, or is it like, hey, I'm going to get to this? Obviously deadlines aside, because I think everybody has at least some
Yeah,
procrastination. Where it's like, oh, I put it off until Sunday
definitely.
night, and it's due at 9 Monday.
Yep. I think, and maybe you could uh agree to this, but I remember one of the last jobs I had was working like retail at Nike back in college. I just hated having a job. I hated having a boss. I hated having to be somewhere at a certain time, no matter what I was doing. I just did not like that structure. And I always told my mom, I remember telling her in high school, I was like, I'm not going to have a real job when I'm older. And I didn't even know I was going to do photography at the time. And she used to get so pissed. Um, and I even was just like, didn't know what I would be doing, but I knew I'd figure it out. And so I love the freedom of being able to start working when I want to. So yeah, aside from deadline, when there are deadlines, I'll, shoot. And then usually how I work is I'll shoot, get home from the shoot, dump the photos onto the computer, and I won't look at them until the next day. Um, and then I'll hop on the computer next day, make selects, sit on those for a day, then edit. And then sometimes if I have enough time, I'll look at my edit, 2 or 3 times more, as each day progresses. And almost every time I end up tweaking it. So just like learning to take time with it too is big. I used to just shoot, edit, not even review it, send it in because I was excited about it. And then, I think that's when I'd go back and look at it. And I was like, what was I doing? I was going too fast. So I've always been kind of addicted to the like be your own boss kind of regiment. Like if I want to take off today, I could go to the airport and fly somewhere. And I just like having that freedom, I hated like putting in time for work, or for vacation. Like it just drives me crazy at some people. Yeah, you have to wait to get time off or choose when you get your time off. And then you have a certain amount of days to have time off. It's just so backwards to me, but I think that's changing a little bit with the COVID situation. People working from home for the most part. I hear people that, enjoy it. And I also don't think you need to work 8 hours a day to be, you know what I mean? That rise and grind thing is kind of dead. It's, sleep, get your sleep first, like be healthy. I think and that's good about now is that's promoted everywhere. Just, your health first, get your sleep, then work. And the work is going to be 10 times stronger than sitting in the office for the past month, sort of thing.
Yeah, I find myself actually, since I started working from home, this would be like, I've kind of off and on done this for years, but like I'll take a job and be like, yeah, this is going to be a cool ride for a couple of years. And then it's like, okay, time to like kind of get back to my own stuff and my own, environment. Yep. But like I find myself working way harder on my own than I ever did in a job that was structured because I just don't operate at like normal hours. Like I typically wake up at like 5 a.m. Like I'm a really early riser usually. But I also stay up super late, but I'll totally take a 20-minute power nap in the middle of the day. And like, that's just like part of how I deal with it. But then I'm in the same boat. Like I love being able to just like, look, it's Tuesday. I just don't want to work on a Tuesday or whatever that is. Because if I can schedule my work to be done on, like I'd rather grind really hard 2 days a week out of the 4 I'm supposed to work or something like that, and have that time to myself because I think ultimately it helps me be more creative. It helps me, just feel better about things too.
Right. Yeah. I think that's something that could be normalized more is because I think I even catch myself on the days where maybe I wake up and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to get anything done today. You just know sometimes, Yeah. And then I see myself maybe on social media or something and you see someone who's like posting their work and then you feel guilty. but you shouldn't, like it's just like you're just so kind of brainwashed here to constantly be working, but you're not going to ever have that work-life balance if that's your constant mindset. Just learning how to unplug, but that's another one of those. Learning how to unplug, I think, and just relax is probably a lifetime lesson in itself.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think it's really interesting too, because we we see people reach their success from the constant grind work mode, right? Like the Casey Neistats, the
Yep.
Gary V's, and it's like, yes, like they
Right.
uploaded every day for 2 years straight, and like
Yep.
that's absolutely, you know, admirable. And I think to certain things, whatever it
Yep.
is that you're doing, it's kind of like you were talking about in the early days of your Instagram stuff, is like post everything, right? Like I think there are things that are valuable about that, but even both of those guys, I think you could look at and look what they do now, and it's
They
like they've
chill
totally
out
backed off and
at
chilled
some
out
point.
about it. They're still working a ton, I'm
Yeah.
sure, but like they've removed that
Yeah.
like grind element in order to find that balance again. It's, at least it seems, not knowing
And
them
they probably
personally.
miss that. Yeah. And I think
Yeah,
even Casey does a good job of talking about it too. They miss that grind. And even sometimes I find myself missing that fuel I used to have early on, where I was shooting all the time, shooting. Like I haven't shot a pair of my friend's shoes. Like I haven't shot Blake's shoes in years now, and I feel like I wish I wanted to sometimes, because that's when I was having so much fun. And I think that's a thing where you have to, I forget where my train of thought was going. Um, yeah, just when you're in that grind, posting every day, you're probably obsessed with doing it. You love that you're doing it. And then you're going to catch yourself out of it one day, and you're going to look back and be like, damn, that was dope.
yeah,
But I
yep.
am enjoying chilling right now. So there's a beauty in that grind for sure.
Well, I mean, I think Blake has officially moved completely to golf spikes at this point. Like, I'm pretty sure he wears them around, even when he's not golfing. So,
Yeah, I think he sleeps in them.
yeah.
Yeah. He might
Oh
be
man,
retired actually. If you listen to this, I think he might be retired.
yeah,
That's what it looks like, at least.
yeah, yeah. Hey man, I mean, I'm just, I should actually get Blake on here. I'd love to chat with him about some of the
That
stuff
would be
he's worked on.
cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so I guess like last couple of questions. What would be kind of, the your like golden nugget of advice for somebody who's looking to get into photography and kind of make their own path behind you in this world?
Yeah, I think to the point of the grind we just said, where Casey was posting every day for a year, those videos weren't at the views they were when he first posted them, so I think go out and do that. Maybe it's free work, or just go shoot with a friend and do it a ton and post it, you know what I mean? Like share it, show people like what you're doing. um and build that base. And I think I've always like kept it there. Like I don't delete anything. Like you can go back and see like where I did that. The first probably a couple hundred posts I have, like none of that was paid work. I was just doing it. You have to go out. You have to want to do it for free technically before you're doing it and getting money. Like I think that's with anything. If you truly love it, you should be willing to do it for free. And I even caught myself in the back. I remember Brandon, I was like, yo, I'll shoot this for free for you guys. And he was like, don't ever say that. He's like, make sure you're worth something. And to his point, like, and I was doing that. I'll do that shit now sometimes. If it's something I'm excited about, like I'm down to shoot something for free. So go out and shoot for free. And I just think the money will follow. So I know if you're trying to make, if you have to make ends meet, that's another story. But I was working part-time jobs. I was working at a restaurant, and then I did the Nike job too. So I was having money come in from that while I was shooting. So I always had some sort of, and it was small income, but when you're in college, it doesn't, that's plenty. So just building that base, and just learning introspectively to trust the process, that it'll work out. And the more you shoot, the more confidence you'll have, the better you're going to get at it. And the rest will kind of, do its thing for you. And you're going to meet amazing people along the way who are going to help you. And then you'll end up helping them, sort of thing. So that's my golden nugget of advice, is just just get started.
Cool, man. All right. Last question. I'm
Yeah.
big into like you already know this, but I'm big into just putting it out in the universe and manifesting like all the shit we want to happen. So,
Yep.
what's you've in the wow, it's been like maybe 8 or 9 years I've known each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy,
It's
man.
crazy.
Um, you've obviously done a lot of cool shit in that time. Um, but I know you've got just as grandiose dreams and aspirations as and ideas as I do. So, what's the dream opportunity for Vince moving forward?
Mm. Um, yeah, I think about that all the time. And yeah, I was just listening to like the Jerry Lorenzo podcast. I like he's one of my I love how that dude operates and how his look on life and everything. And or even someone like like a Daniel Arsham, those are Pharrell, even like some of these people, maybe not Pharrell, but they didn't have their career didn't peak until they were like, later in life sort of thing. Like Jerry was fully like in the nightlife scene until he was like maybe like 31. Then he made a t-shirt, and the rest is kind of history. And no one cares what he did those first 30 years. So my thing, I mean, right now is, anytime there'd be a chance for a billboard or something like to see work printed that big, it would be amazing. Um, and even a big goal right now is to be working overseas too. I would love to be shooting for anybody, in Italy or France, if you're listening, you know, so that's another dream of mine too. But yeah, going back to that point of Jerry, I think there's, by saying yes to new things, I always am excited by the thought of maybe what I'm doing now for like the first half of my life isn't what I'll end up doing the last half. Although it feels like I will be right now, but I'm always super excited about maybe there's something else out there I haven't tried yet that I'm going to get hooked on, and just blowing that out of proportion.
Right on, man. I love that. I mean, I
Yeah.
think I feel like the same way, and it's such
Yeah.
a it's a great point to end on too, because like one of the things that I kind of going back to like just trying everything. I think that people we get programmed, whether it's America or whatever wherever it is, like we get programmed to be like, oh, this is your choice and you've made your choice, and now like you got to live with
Right.
it for the rest of your life, and that's so not how it works, right? Like we live in a
Yeah.
time where we could literally wake up tomorrow and be like, you know what? I'm going to learn how to cook and I'm going to become an amazing chef because look,
Yeah.
everything's out there to find. And I think that's awesome to hear because I'm just excited to see where you take the next 10 years and hopefully we revisit this, down the road and then I'll ask you again
Yeah.
and it'll be like, hey, like I already did that. I'm gonna go shoot on Mars now or something. Who knows where we'll be at. So,
Imagine that. That would be crazy.
but well, thanks for spending the time with me. Make sure let everybody know how to find you.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it just my first and last name kind of across everything there. You can find me at, and thank you, man. I've said it a million times, but yeah, you were one of the first kind of reassurances that I could do this. And have been one of those people that keeps me in the business. We always talk about those good people. So I appreciate you more than you know.
Of course, man. Of course, man. It's been an honor to see your journey, and I still, I mean, you can't see it on camera, but I still have your poster from way back in the day. It was probably Blake's
That's
George's,
like
I think, too. So.
there's only like 3 of those out there, which is I'm so geeked when I see that on your wall.
Right on, man. Well, thank you. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Make sure you connect with Vince.
Yeah.
Probably Instagram, his website, Twitter, etc. And
Yeah.
we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.
See ya. See you guys.